Well, a health and economic crisis in America helped to shine a spotlight on existing inequalities all across the country. And recent mass protests about race in the country have also given us an opportunity to have a dialogue about how to move forward. But as we try to heal from the recent crises, some Americans, especially those in hard-hit cities, are still being left out from the recovery. Marc Morial is the president and CEO of the National Urban League, a leading civil rights organization. He joins us this morning. Marc, great to have you here. Thank you so
Good
much for
morning.
joining us. How
Thank
is
you.
economic inequality really preventing a lot of Americans from getting back to full strength right now?
Well, income inequality means that when people even get back to work, that paycheck doesn't go far enough to help them make ends meet. So if you think that those who've been unemployed, their unemployment insurance will run out, I believe, on July 1st. The enhanced unemployment insurance will run out on July 1st. So one important step that Congress can take right now is to pass the bill, or the Senate can pass the bill passed by the House, the HEROES Act, which would extend those unemployment benefits, because the income inequality we see has been in the making for several decades, and the racial income inequality is even greater. So there's a gap between those who are rich and those who are poor and those who are middle class overall. But there's even a gap between what one might call middle class white Americans and middle class black Americans if you look at income on a scale. And so in this environment where unemployment overall is in double digits and unemployment in the black community is nearing 20%, the road back is not going to be easy. And Congress has to continue to intervene. It's a fantasy to believe that without continued fiscal intervention by the Congress, continued monetary intervention by the Fed, that we can get back on our feet economically.
Marc, we saw those really good job numbers a couple weeks ago. A lot of people really cheering, thinking the economy might have turned a corner here. But those numbers actually showed an increase in black and Hispanic unemployment, despite white unemployment falling. Some estimating even African American unemployment could be hovering around 30%, which is just awful. What can be done to really fix this racial disparity here?
So I think, first of all, the numbers that people saw were extremely misleading. Many of the people who were counted as employed were actually employed as a result of the PPP. What happens when that business runs out of those PPP funds and can't and doesn't have the same number of customers, the same number of business activity? So I think the unemployment rate, the true unemployment rate, is closer to probably 20% if you count those who are continuing to look, those who are looking, those who are not looking because they feel like the economy is not in a position to employ them, and those who may be working in part-time jobs. So those numbers were misleading. They were highly misinterpreted, I believe. Now, what can we do? First thing we can do, and this is something even pre-COVID, the challenge we have, is raise the minimum wage across the board in America to a living wage. Employ devices like the child tax credit, expand that. There are a number of steps that can be done to move us in the right direction against income inequality and racial income inequality, which exists in this country today. So there's no magic wand here. There's a series of steps, but it would be a good faith measure to pass comprehensive, if you will, a comprehensive living wage law in this country that sets the minimum wage at $15 per hour for all workers, regardless of sector, regardless of location, and also expand things like the child tax credit, which is something that works through the tax code that would raise a lot of children out of poverty. There are other measures we can take and other measures that need to be taken, but I want to point those two out because I think people are looking for things that can be done immediately, as well as things that have to be done long term. It took us 30 to 40 years to get into this income inequality ditch, and it's going to take some time, but it's going to take a commitment by the public and private sectors to move us beyond it.
Mark, I want to talk about President Trump and all of this because the administration has touted black unemployment numbers in recent years is why President Trump claims he does so well with the black community. But the government directly addressed the racial disparity in the populations of Americans who are out of work. Have they even addressed that issue that's happening right now?
Yeah, the president and his team ignore the fact that he's got the least diverse cabinet in American history, that he's got the least diverse judicial appointments in modern American history, that he's never really built a relationship with the black leadership, whether it's the Congressional Black Caucus or civil rights leaders, and that the unemployment levels that existed in black America were really as a result of the Obama momentum. The black unemployment rate started coming down and it continued under Donald Trump. It just continued. There was no policy measure undertaken by the president. The massive rich man's tax cut that took place did not benefit black America. So some of this is a mirage. It's spin. It's hyperbole, and it doesn't really address the issue. And I'm a little, I always get a little perturbed when politicians start, taking credit for things that they really had very little to do with.
All right, Marc Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Such a pleasure to have you on this morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.